Good day, everybody. I hope that you are well and also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 8 English lesson on commas. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and we're going to select the subject of English language arts. Grade 8, and then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of commas. All right. So our chapter is commas. Our subject is English language arts. Grade 8, and the lesson that we are going to be focusing on under the chapter of commas is commas with direct addresses, introductory words, interjections, and interrupters. And then also commas with coordinating adverbs. All right. So this is commas is a continuation of our previous lesson. In our previous lesson, we did commas with series, dates, and places. And series are like, for example, where you have like a list of certain things and now you need to put a comma. Like, let's say, for example, you go to the shop with the grocery list and you're going to get apples, pears, bananas, and right? So we need to put a comma after all of those words, but not a comma before the last word. All right. And then we also had commas with compound and complex sentences, right? Today, we are going to be doing commas with direct addresses, introductory words, interjections, and interrupters, as well as commas with adjectives. All right. So when it comes to using commas, right, we use commas to separate the names of a person being spoken to from the rest of the sentence, right? So, for example, if we were to write a sentence, right, with, let's say, making mention of the person that we are speaking to, and then we need to separate it from the rest of the sentence. Like, for example, we say, "Thank you, Bella," right? So there we have thank you, comma, and then Bella, right? So that two, basically that two are separated, right? The thank you is separated to the person's name. And even if you look at the next sentence, it says, "Thank you, Bella, for your help," right? So we could have just looked at Bella and said that thank you for your help. But now, if we're specifically making mention of Bella, then it means that we are separating Bella's name with commas. All right. And once again, we say we use commas to separate a name of a person being spoken to from the rest of the sentence. And we made an example of thank you, Bella, for your help. We also use a comma after words like yes, no, well, and many more others, right? When they are followed by a complete sentence. So if, for example, I say yes, comma, and I explain why I say yes, or I say no, and I explain why I say no, right? And then, or I say well, then it means that and I follow with another sentence to complete another few words to complete the sentence, then it means that we need to add a comma. Like for example, we say yes, that sounds great, right? So now that is a complete sentence. That is why we add yes and we separate as well as the rest of the sentence with a comma. So we also use a comma after a mild interjection, right? It's like, oh, what a stunning sunset, right? So yeah, we also use the word oh to separate the comma. We use a comma to separate oh from the rest of the sentence, right? And then we can also use commas around an interrupter, which is a word, phrase, or even a clause that adds additional non essential information to the sentence. And if we look at an example of an interrupter, right, which is a word, either phrase or a clause that adds additional non essential information to a sentence, then we can say, you, of course, may have a different opinion. And that is what we call interrupters, right? Interjections, right, can also be words like, oh, what a stunning sunset, right? So that is how we can separate commas using interrupters, interjections, right? Or just any other words to separate our words from our commas. All right. So we're going to look at an activity or example now, right? Of of interjections or of interrupters, or how we use commas with direct addresses, introductory words, like we say with interjections, as well as interrupters. All right, and if we look at, it says, correct the text by inserting two commas. So we need to correct the text by inserting two commas, right? It says, in Anthony's defense, Coach Coleman and Coach Coleman, I have to put, I have to point out that that he did have three assists in the last game. Oh, so in Anthony's defense, yes. Sorry, I had to reread it. You see, that is why, because here it says we need to correct the text by inserting commas, right? Remember, we said that we use commas to either separate names, we use commas to separate certain words, interjections, interrupters, and then to complete the sentence, right? So we can say, in Anthony's defense, comma, Coach Coleman, comma, I have to point out that he did have three assists in the last game. So which means that we are making mention of Coach Coleman, right? But now we are separating that word, Coach Coleman, from the rest, right? So we are basically using commas around um, the name Coach Coleman, right? Which is the name of a person that is being spoken to. So we are speaking to Coach Coleman. So he says, in Anthony's defense, Coach Coleman, I have to point out that he did have three assists in the last game. So we are then speaking to Coach Coleman, which means that we need to put our commas on Coach Coleman because that is the name of the person that is being spoken to, right? That is why we need to read that sentence again. And we need, once you separate that word or the name of a person, right, with commas, you'll realize that once it is being separated, then your sentence makes perfect sense. So we had to put a comma before Coach Coleman as well as a comma after Coach Coleman. All right. And even here it says use commas around Coach Coleman, which is the name of a person being spoken to. For example, in Anthony's defense, comma, Coach Coleman, comma, I have pointed out that he gave three assists in the last game, right? So we then use a comma to also separate the names of people, and we use commas to separate the name of a person that is being spoken to from the rest of the sentence. Right? We need to correct the text by inserting one comma. Yeah, it says, oops, we forgot to pick up fertilizer during our visit to the hardware store. So, oops, we forgot to pick up fertilizer during our visit to the hardware store. So now we need to add one or insert one comma within that sentence. All right, and if we were to insert one comma within that sentence, then we will insert a comma just after the word oops, right? Because we said that that is a mild interjection. Like, say, oh wow, oh, oops. We forgot to pick up fertilizer during our visit to the hardware store. So, oops, and then a comma, right? So we use the word oops and a comma to separate that from the rest of the sentence. And that we called a mild interjection. And then we have another word. It says we need to use one word. We need to insert the one comma within the sentence. And it says, oh no, the widespread, oh no, the widespread use of antibacterials is causing resistant bacteria to spread. And if we were to add a comma, then also yet another mild interjection. So we'll say, oh no, comma, right? And then we have the rest of our sentence. All right, so we say, oh no, comma, the widespread use of antibacterials is causing resistant bacteria to spread. Right, so we added our one comma after our mild, within that sentence, which is a mild interjection. So our comma comes after the words, oh no, right? And the words, oh no, is a mild interjection. All right, so now we're going to our test, right? Where we are going to either use commas with direct addresses, introductory words, interjections, and interrupters. Why is there nothing? Let me just see something. Nothing. Okay, here it says Mr. Wilkinson, though, tends to exaggerate. So I'm not sure that I entirely believe his. Or do we say Mr. Wilkinson, though, tends to exaggerate? So I'm not sure that I entirely believe his. So we need to choose the correct wherever we put wherever we placed the commas. And remember, we usually separate a word, a name of a person, the person that we are talking about or talking to. We separate that with a comma. All right. Oh no, the widespread use of antibacterials is causing resistant bacteria to spread. We need to add one comma or insert one comma within that sentence. Are we going to say, oh no, comma, the widespread use of antibacterials is causing resistant bacteria to spread? Or are we going to say choose the second option with no commas. All right. So if we were to choose the correct one, then yes, we will choose option one, right? Because we use the word oh no as well as a comma, and that is also a mild interjection. So well done. We need to insert our one comma within the sentence. It says, no, the forecast for tomorrow night is calling for partly cloudy skies, not rain. Is it option one, which is no, comma, the forecast for tomorrow night is calling for partly cloudy skies, not rain? Or is it option two, which is no, the forecast for tomorrow night is calling for partly cloudy skies, comma, not rain? So we need to choose either option one or option two. And if we were to choose the correct one, then we will say no, comma. The forecast for tomorrow night is calling for partly cloudy skies, comma, not rain. So we firstly also add a comma after no. Because remember we said that after no, yes, or well, we need to add a comma or insert a comma. So we need to also once again insert one comma within the text. It says these software installation instructions are baffling. Would you explain what I'm supposed to do next? So is it option one, where we add a comma after or option two, where we add no comma? And if we were to add the correct comma, right, then we will choose option one, where we'll say comma, right? So we add a comma after, like when the sentence starts, after yes, no, well, right? Ezra was, as usual, being loud, so I asked him to talk more quietly. So is it option one, where we say Ezra was, comma, as usual, comma, being loud, so I asked him to talk more? So is it option one or option two? And if we were to choose the two commas, right? And then if we're going to insert the two commas, and then we're going to choose option one, right? Where we insert our two commas correctly. All right, so now we're going on to the next one where we say commas with coordinate adjectives. So we need to insert two commas to separate the coordinate adjectives. And before we do that, we're going to find out what coordinate adjectives are. So it says that look for adjectives that are next to each other and then test whether they are coordinate adjectives, right? You remember we can have more than one adjective that basically tells us about a noun, right? So in a sentence, you can maybe have the beautiful red dress, right? So which means that beautiful and red, it describes that specific noun. But now it says you need to look for adjectives that are next to each other and then test to see whether they are coordinate adjectives. And we need to first find out what coordinate adjectives are. And in coordinate adjectives, right, it says that coordinate adjectives are adjectives that describe the same noun equally. And they should be separated with a comma. So, coordinate adjectives, right, they describe the same noun equally, and they usually should be separated with commas. Sorry. So, coordinate adjectives are adjectives that describe the same noun equally, and they should be separated with commas. It says answer these two questions to check for coordinate adjectives. So before you are able to identify the coordinates, right, the coordinate adjectives, you need to ask yourself these two questions before or while or when we check for coordinate adjectives. The question is, does the text still sound okay when the adjective order is changed? Or does the text still sound okay when and is inserted? So you need to ask yourself two questions to check for coordinate adjectives. The first one is, does the text still sound okay when the adjective order is changed? Or we ask ourselves, does the text still sound okay when and is inserted within that sentence? Right? So if the answer to both questions is yes, then the adjectives are coordinate and should be separated with a comma. All right. And if we look at a few more examples, right, then it says that we need to look at the adjectives that are next to each other and then test whether they are coordinate adjectives. It says hesitant and anxious are coordinate adjectives, right? And so they should be separated with a comma. You can tell because the text still sounds okay when the adjective order is changed as well as when and is inserted. For example, it says anxious, hesitant beginners. So we then add our comma after anxious, or we can even add our coordinate conjunction and to separate those two words. And yet it is a coordinate adjective because even when we add the word and then the order does not change. Then we have tall and snow covered. Tall and snow covered are coordinate adjectives, so they should be separated, right? And they need to be separated with a comma. And you can tell because the text still sounds okay when the adjective order is changed when we add an and to it. For example, snow covered tall mountains, or we can say tall and snow covered mountains, and yet it still stays the same. Then we have professional and ski, right? And we say that they are not coordinate adjectives. The reason for that is they should not be separated with a comma. And you can tell because the text does not sound right at all when the adjective order is changed. So it must not be a certain words shouldn't be, separated with commas because even if we were to try and change that, right? Then if the sentence sounds different or looks different or is different when the comma is added, right? Then it means that it shouldn't be changed. And then it is not a conjunction. A coordinate adjective. For example, we have ski professional instructors or professional and ski instructors, right? So that is, we shouldn't add that. We shouldn't add the word and or add the comma. All right. So now we're going to look at our activities and then we're going on to our test. It says having more experience than the hesitant, anxious beginner, the intermediate skiers are allowed to snake down the tall, snow covered mountain without their professional ski instructors accompanying them. So we need to insert two commas to separate the coordinate adjective. And if we were to add our commas, right, then we will definitely add our comma by tall, snow covered mountains without their professional ski instructors accompanying them. It says, here we first have having more experience than the hesitant, anxious beginner. So here we're going to add a comma by hesitant, comma, anxious beginners. The intermediate skiers were allowed to snake down the tall, comma, snow mountain without their professional ski instructors accompanying them. So that is our two commas and also the places where we had to add our commas. All right. Yeah, so we added a comma next to or after hesitant, and we added a comma after tall. Well done. All right, so now we're going to identify or insert two commas to separate coordinate adjectives, right? It says thorough habitual washing is an ideal way to keep yourself healthy. Disinfectant contaminated surfaces is another simple, effective method for preventing the spread of viruses. I think if we were to add the two, we would say thorough, habitual, comma, hand washing is an ideal way to keep yourself healthy. Disinfecting contaminated surfaces is another simple way for preventing the spread of viruses, right? So we added our commas by those two, which is of the habitual and of the disinfecting. Oh, it is not even by, it's first thorough, then comma. Habitual hand washing is ideal for disinfect. Oh, and a simple comma. All right, let's go test. All right, so we have to separate or use one comma to separate the coordinate adjectives. It says for their vacation, Jackson and Molly rented a small beach bungalow, but the anticipated fast approaching hurricane forced them to evacuate and end their vacation early. And we need to insert the one comma to separate the coordinate adjective. Is it option one, which says for their vacation, Jackson and Molly rented a small beach bungalow, but the unanticipated Fast approaching hurricane forced them to evacuate and end their vacation early. And if we were to choose our correct comma, and then we will choose option, let's choose option one. Yes, and option one is correct. Actually, option one, because we had to add our comma after is it anticipated, sorry, right? All right, let's look at the next one. We need to add two commas, right? So we're going to add our commas where it is needed. It says thorough habitual hand washing is an ideal way to keep yourself healthy. Disinfecting contaminated surfaces is another simple, effective method for preventing the spread of the virus. So we are going to add two commas within the sentence. And if we were to choose we need to choose the correct option, right? That shows that we had added our commas or wherever that we need to add our comma. All right, and if we were to choose the correct one, then yes, we'll choose option one, right? So well done. All right, let's do the last one. It says insert one comma to separate the coordinate adjectives. It says the new recruits managed the easy 6-mile hike without too much trouble, but they were ready to collapse by the end of the long, arduous sprint that followed. All right, and if we were to choose we need to add or insert one comma in order to show our basically our adjective, coordinate adjective. All right, and if we were to choose one comma to separate the coordinate adjective, right? Then we're going to choose option one because here by long arduous sprints that follows, which means that long comma arduous sprints that followed. So we will choose option 1. All right, so well done. Option 1 is correct. Right, and that is basically the end of our lesson on commas. We basically over commas with direct addresses, introductory words, interjections, and interrupters. We said that we separate words with a comma, right, to complete a sentence. Words like even, for example, oh, or oh no, or yes or no, we add a comma thereafter, and then the complete of the rest of our sentences, right? And we also went over commas with coordinate adjectives, which we made mention of. All right, so that is the end of our lesson. Thank you very much, grade 8, for joining the class, and I really hope you're going to have a good evening or day further. Goodbye.